Welcome back. Episode 2 of the Bible Nation podcast. I'm Doug Levesque here with Jason Georges and Jesse Levesque. Thanks for tuning in with us. We, last episode, talked about President Trump and the whirlwind of activity, particularly in domestic policy. And now we want to talk about manifest destiny. What does that mean? Man, if you're an American, that means it's all ours. We're going west, east, north, south. We want Panama, Greenland. We want China, right? We want it all. And so Trump has kind of had those overtures, which people have said is like modern day colonialism. And it sounds absurd, but he's serious. A lot of Americans are glad to protect the borders, but a lot of Americans are glad to be expanding as well. Is that good? Is that right? What should our foreign policy be? We're going to discuss that and more today on the Bible Nation podcast. Remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven and it works. What are we standing up for? The ability, the freedom to do what's right as God defines that right.
God's the ultimate author of liberty.
We don't want government to stand between us and our freedom to do what is right.
Well, since the Monroe Doctrine of the Western Hemisphere being within the American realm of control, not letting anybody else get in there, the United States has had overarching influence in the Western Hemisphere. It's been our policy, really. And since the Marshall Plan in World War II, we've been determined to hold back the stair-stepping of communism. So it's been our foreign policy to be strong. And Trump wants to go back to that. And the first place he's going back to that is in the issue of tariffs. Guys, what do you think of tariffs? He's going back to some 1700s law on tariffs to practice these particular style of American doctrines. It's making the world mad, but it's working for us. So, Pastor Jay, what do you think? Tariffs on Canada and Mexico?
Yeah, no, listen, it's an old world way of handling some new world problems, right? Yeah. But also, it is one of the great inequities in global economies right now, is this taking advantage of America. This is one, the perspective that the world is taking advantage of America is one I agree with President Trump on. Yeah. We have been carrying way too much of the load, and the world will allow us to carry the load if we want to. And
much so that it's almost like they forgot that they're anti-American in it. They've just redefined it, and we've accepted it.
Right.
Almost. And then, but Trump's come back and said, no, they're taking advantage of us. We're not going to be taken advantage of. We're paying for everything. Our taxpayers are paying for everything. No, you're going to pay for some stuff. And that's the real practicality of it.
Right. Now, what has driven low tariffs or not having tariffs is the American consumers, desire for low-cost products. Mm-hmm. So it was the China manufacturing, which why did China manufacturing happen? Well, because our manufacturing got put out of whack by the unions. Yeah. And so there are imbalances. So the imbalance of union power and influence in creating manufacturing jobs that were too overpaid, right, for what they were producing and what they were selling, then makes the pressure to go overseas. And so we're going to see this. It's not right. Yeah. So we're coming back, right, and it's not by accident that we're coming back at a time when unions are as weak as they've ever been, right. And even the political allegiance of unions has shifted over to Donald Trump. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I almost wonder if some of this tariff talk has been part of that, because the union wants a strong tariff. Yeah. A strong tariff means it's forced in America, and the more the government forces manufacturing in America, we don't have to be competitive. Now they can raise their demands. Yeah. And so there is that balance, but we do need to bring back, if for any reason, national security reasons, manufacturing back to America.
Yeah. What do the 20-somethings think about tariffs? 20-somethings don't think about stuff like that, but are they just rediscovering it, or how do they think about it? Do they think it's unfair? Do they think it's some sort of machismo, or
Well, what resonates with me is he talks of establishing the External Revenue Service.
Yeah.
And so I'd say 20-somethings like myself, we're kind of a little bit, trying to breathe, trying to just make it. Yeah. And so, what a novel idea. Let's focus on funding that's outside, that's through tariffs. And so, I don't know, I speak for myself and maybe a little bit of the conservative mindset, but Yeah, external revenue.
It's actually time maybe to let's assist our young people in getting a house. Let's assist our young people in their groceries. We're feeding everyone else, and we can't feed ourselves, and the tax burden is too high. Yeah. So that that's interesting how everybody looks at it differently. I think the tariff threat made Canada and Mexico immediately say we're gonna deal with the safety on the border, and he said, okay, that just bought you 30 days. In other words, I'm not done with you.
Right.
These tariffs are coming back. We're not done. Master negotiation, isn't it? The art of the deal. And so at least it turned their vocabulary and turned them, into a different direction.
But in global negotiations, we want our negotiator to be America first.
Yes.
We want American interests put over others. And also knowing historically, in knowing the goodness of the American people, a strong America is better for the world.
Yes.
A strong America that's economically powerful is better than a strong China that is economically powerful.
There's a biblical concept here. David was friends with Hiram of Tyre and Sidon in Lebanon, and but David was stronger. Hiram did better under the nuclear umbrella of Israel and David. But what did Hiram provide for David? He provided lumber and stone and workers for the temple. Now, David was preparing for the next generation because it was actually Solomon who was able to put it together. Solomon also had a relationship with Hiram, so it was multi-generational. It was kind of a next-door neighbor to the north, and it wasn't really a tariff. It didn't call it a tariff, but it was a tariff. You provide us with these things, and we'll be in good relations. We'll protect you, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a biblical idea for that. Somebody write that down, and we'll put that in the next book. But I like the verse, 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 8. It's also repeated in 2 Chronicles chapter 9, verse 7, where Queen of Sheba is coming to Solomon, and she says, happy are thy men, happy are thy servants, which stand continually before thee, and that hear thy wisdom. And so she recognizes this, and she sees it. Her kingdom doesn't work this way. She actually brings things to Solomon. So it's not really a tariff, but in essence is we want some sort of contract where we're with you, we're under you, we're with you, and we're bringing you this. It's immediately after those 3 or 4 verses that I just read that the Bible says that Solomon was able to bring in gold and taxes, and it says 66. In other words, the only other 666 in the Bible besides Revelation is there with Solomon, the number of his name, right? So Solomon is supposed to be the son of David, the king of Israel, but there's kind of a pseudo good and evil there, right, in the mix, and particularly with that. And it's interesting, Trump is all about gold. He's all about the tariff. He's all about, he's not said the word king, you know what I mean? But setting himself up that way. And this is why we have to appreciate the tariff, the America First, but we have to have that little red flag that says, what's going on here? How is he thinking this when no one else is thinking this? Yeah. What exactly is he thinking about in setting himself up? He's put Europe in a position where now they all have to give the 2% to NATO, or else he's going to tariff them. Now, I think they're going to do that, and he's going to give them, that's good, that just bought you 30 days. And he's just going to press them all the way and get as much as he can in the first at least 100 days before they can organize and counter American expansion. I mean, I think we're going to see that as well. But I like the tariffs. I think they're working. I think Rubio is traveling with the arm of tariffs.
Yeah, and it puts them in a strong position.
Yeah, and Hegseth's out there saying lethality. Winning a war through strength. We don't have to fight it. We're that strength. So it's good to give your people tools to work with.
And lo and behold, it doesn't even take us like the veiled response. The response is so small. In other words, it's just the saber rattling. That's all it takes. Like we don't have to do any of these things.
Yeah. Biden forgot his sword, and so Trump's like shaking his out like a madman.
Yeah.
So his ideology doesn't see it as a sword.
Right.
His ideology doesn't.
No, he's transactional. This is national transaction, sort of concept. So, and then plus with his international businesses, he's had to deal with taxation and tariffs that aren't fair because we're Americans. And so it's a form of anti-Americanism, which agrees with communism, and so even people who aren't, they just kind of don't realize you're using a vocabulary that's very threatening to us. And so he's just putting them on their heels, letting them feel it. I like hearing the European leaders say, listen, this is what Trump's really doing. In other words, they recognize it, and they see it as a threat, but they're saying, we got to work with this guy because they got us. They got us. They put the check. They moved the pawn and it got us. So that's great. Let's talk about Panama. The Panama Canal, and we built that. Somebody pull up. When did we build that? Was that Teddy Roosevelt? Teddy Roosevelt, yep. 1894, 96, something like that. I don't know. And obviously it wasn't just American bodies down there, but it was an incredible engineering feat.
August 15th, 1914.
August 15th, 1914.
Just before the Great War.
And so we had a 99-year lease on it or something, and then Carter kind of gave it over, although there were some rules. One of the rules were if we needed it for military action, we would take it back. So, I mean, there were these clauses. Go ahead.
Which Rubio just said, because apparently he had a conversation with Panama.
In Espanol.
Right. And then we publicized the nature of that conversation, and now Panama's coming out and saying, we didn't agree to any of that. And Rubio's kind of like, well, we get you have your process. Like you have to go through your process to get this through. But we have a military alliance with you, treaty. You expect us to protect you. So it only would seem right that our military ships can go through freely through the area that they are obligated to protect.
Yes.
And that's common sense.
Yes.
That is common sense.
And I'm older than you guys, and so I remember that it was very controversial when Jimmy Carter did this.
Oh, yeah.
And even under Reagan, we were talking about how to counter this because immediately the Chinese started to come in and buy property along. They didn't own the canal, but they were buying property along the canal and then setting up quote-unquote businesses that had manufacturing, that had heavy equipment. But when you have manufacturing and heavy equipment, you have roads, you have infrastructure, and you can hide military things in there. You're able to shut down. So this has always been a threat. Some people's like, oh, this is brand new. No, it's not. It's always been going on. Trump's been around longer than me in those regards. And
he remembers that.
Yes.
So you got to think, 80s is when Trump is really making his money, right?
Yeah, he's on the front of Time magazine with a dove talking about the presidency someday.
Right. And so he was an adult, very formative, powerful man already when this is all transpiring. And a man that's involved in shipping, right? Has some interest to that. So
doesn't he own like Miss America, Miss World?
Yeah.
I mean, those things always take place down South America and stuff like that. So I mean, he knows, man. He's got golf courses everywhere. But like you said, I want Greenland. We're going to talk about Greenland. I want Panama. I want that in our realm, and they don't have to be a state. They could be somehow like a property of the United States or something, in that regard. So China did back off, or not. China didn't back off. Panama said we're going to pull out of the Belt and Road trade agreement with China. They didn't say we're going to remove China from the properties that they have, but that was part of the Belt and Trade. The Belt and Trade was China saying, we're going to invest in your infrastructure. We will send our people to do it, and we'll give you the loan to pay our people. I mean, that's just a twisted way of colonialism. And that Belt and Road has put a lot of countries in debt to China.
Yeah.
And so we're helping Panama get out of it. This president there ought to realize this is our chance to turn this thing around.
Well, and the thing you got to understand with China and business is, first of all, they're communists.
Yes.
So they are anti-business, private business in their country, but yet they utilize our own corporate system against us.
Yes.
And so that these Chinese, when we say Chinese businesses, we don't mean businesses owned by Chinese people.
No.
We mean businesses owned by the Chinese government.
Party, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's like giving them sovereign territory.
And it's interesting that Kamala's husband was a lawyer that represented the CCCP in America. That's just wicked, man. That's just evil. So, listen, and the thing is too, what do you do when you're negotiating? You come out strong. Greenland's ours, Panama's ours. All we got to do is to twist, get free rights, expanded rights, other people paying for stuff, and we've won. I mean, do we really want 50,000 Greenlanders to have the ability to vote in our election? Do we really want, Panama to be on our public dole? Not really, but he's negotiating hard. And, as he gets back, then he could be the good guy with them as well. So I'm all for Panama. Greenland. I say Iceland is green and Greenland is ice. But Greenland, we had an army base there during World War II, several, and still do have. That's where a lot of what's it called? Space Force?
Space base, yeah. We have
space base,
space
whatever,
stuff
because
there.
it's on the north.
Yep.
It can monitor, over.
I think that was also during World War II how we got our flying fortresses over there.
We had to
Yeah,
stair-step.
we had to stair step them over there, and so that was,
Then the Cold War, it was like a place to intercept or recognize or launch our nukes from.
Yeah.
And some people are saying there's nuclear secrets there that nobody knows about, and that by Trump saying we want Greenland, he's saying we want to reinforce our nuclear.
Yeah, he's not even hiding the language of this is for the good of the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Defense-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's even said that already. So yeah, strategic location for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've heard a lot of talk about mineral wealth,
And minerals
stuff
too.
like that. Going back to Solomon.
Yeah.
Solomon sent out ships, and they brought back ivory and peacocks and apes, spices and everything else. And so, Trump is very Solomonic, even in Israel. Even in Israel, you know what I mean? And so he's expanding empire. And as an American, I'm for it. People have talked about buying Greenland as long as they've talked about buying Alaska. You know what I mean? And conquering the Philippines and Guam. So this is not a new concept. This is just, we almost lost talking about it. We almost kind of just gave it over to socialistic ideals. Let Europe creep in on us. And so I think it's great rhetoric for society to push back on that and gain hold of it philosophically.
if you really want to understand the geographical significance of Greenland, is you got to look at a picture of the globe from the North Pole.
Yeah.
From the North Pole.
Yeah.
Because if you think of Greenland in the context of Greenland, then Europe, then Russia, you're like, okay, that's far away. But when you look at it over the context of the North Pole, Greenland's northern land is very close to Russia's northern land.
What's closer to
And
the
it's
North
part of that
Pole?
western part of Russia that we can't get to very easily.
What's closer to the North Pole? Alaska, Canada, Russia.
No, Greenland.
Greenland is.
Yeah.
So Greenland is owning the North.
Right.
Doesn't the Antichrist say, "I will ascend to the Most High. I will own the North."
They're on the sides of the North or something like
Yeah,
that.
sides of the North.
If you think about if you were to put a dot in the middle of Russia,
Yeah.
it is closer to get there from the top of Greenland than from Alaska. Even though Alaska goes right across. So I'm saying it gets us. Now, you see why the Russians don't want us to have it.
Owning the high ground is owning that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if nothing else, philosophically,
Yeah.
that, no, we're the ones that have our hands on this in that. So, again, if possible, deceiving even the very elect. Like, I voted for Trump after not voting for him. And I'm pleased with his domestic policy, his foreign policy. All these things, I'm bleeding hard American on all these things. It all makes sense to me, the foreign policy does. It's not really new. It's stuff we've talked about that had more virtue in the past than it does today. And so I'm for that. And yet, holy moly. I can't believe, guys, we're talking 3 weeks. We're talking 3 weeks from Inauguration Day, right? And
that would just kind of be one of the last, it's kind of Europe's last, I guess, foothold, you could say. It's barely a foothold.
Yes.
Denmark's there's already so much autonomy Greenland has. Almost kind of like what Puerto Rico is to us.
Yeah.
A little bit. So, but it's kind of, it was the Monroe Doctrine to get Europe out of the Western Hemisphere, basically. So it's
and the thing is,
very 1800s right now.
You go to Europe, nobody is nationalistic and flies their flag. Maybe the French a little bit, maybe the Brits a little bit, but like the Danes are like, it was fun while it lasted. They don't really care, and so 50,000 people is less than the people that live in our county.
Right.
It's a little bit more than what live in our city. So yes, they're native. They should have considerations and rights and get a say and all those things, particularly hunting rights. And the Danes have just been throwing money, at their social construction, and at least it's Western and semi-Christian there as well. But we would probably even do better by them in all of that: infrastructure, financial support, Social Security kind of concepts, and then military protection. So, man, it really does make sense to do that. I hope we win that particular thing.
Yeah, and their objection would be to it, not because of America, it would be because of Trump.
Right.
Like, I bet you Trump...
That would be my objection.
Yeah. I mean, so I bet you could write an agreement that said the annexation happens under the next presidency. We just don't want Trump.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. If you weren't self-interested and you really were America first and not yourself first, you would put some of these things in play for that. And who's not to say these...
If you're a people group, you're basically your own nation, and you have a guy who treats you like you're nothing, like he can just annex. you maybe wouldn't want the guy, but there's probably a better way to do it.
Yeah.
But,
and this with Trump, we're talking about 2 of his 3 wives are foreign.
Yeah.
He's not opposed to owning foreign property.
Yeah, it's Daniel 11 about the king of the north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, we always have talked about this concept of the Antichrist quotient. And in modernity, that quotient goes higher with any of these world leaders, and the things that they're doing. And then every geopolitical move, particularly as it ties to Israel or its allies or connections, kind of raise that Antichrist quotient. And so we've said before, we're not saying Obama's the Antichrist, or we're not saying that Trump's the Antichrist, or Macron, or MBS from Saudi Arabia, or Netanyahu. But they all have these higher numbers because they're involved in this play that we see happening, which brings us to Gaza, right? Now, Gaza was part of Israel. Israel gave up Gaza, moved out their own pilgrims, or would you say moved out their own people, and traded land for peace. But what have they gotten? They've not gotten land for peace. And so most of them are saying, we're taking our land back, because they actually had fought over that multiple times, and they had that or most of it. And I think the Israeli people are like, well, we're done with Hamas. And Hamas has got to be done. Their army's got to be done. And they're not done fighting there. It's not going to be American troops. But then the day after Hamas, what's that going to look like? Well, the Arabs, absolutely, it's not going to be Israeli. And MBS and Saudi Arabia and the other nations that want to join the Abraham Accords are saying, well, there has to be a 2-state solution. I think Trump's saying, yeah, we're the second state. We're the second state there. We're going to be there, and it'll benefit you. They want to build a pipeline from the Red Sea up through tip of Saudi, Jordan, and then into Israel, into the Med. And, of course, the Saudis are building that linear city called Neom, right? Well, that's just a pipeline with stuff around it so nobody can shoot it because civilians live there, sort of thing. But that's going to pipe their oil from the Gulf all the way over to the Red Sea, but then they got to get it up outside of the canal. And so they want to partner with Israel because that's the best, safest thing that they're going to make a ton of money on, given their stuff. It takes like 30 days off the shipment and all the danger out. So, I think Trump's son-in-law, what's his name?
Kushner. Yeah,
Kushner. They're thinking this property is key oil transit. It is the Riviera as far as Mediterranean, type of concept. And they're seeing real estate stars and going for it. So, again, Trump's going to talk the farthest right, and whatever comes left, we've just moved you from your position.
Right.
And it's going to be transactional. So other people's going to pay for it because it's a pipeline. Other people's going to pay for it because they're getting the money. Me and Jared are going to put a golf course in and a Trump tower and stuff like that. But honestly, it does make sense for the Gazans because it is unfair for them because none of their Arab partners want them.
Right.
They have no sort of great history heritage other than just trial and tribulation. So let's temporarily move them, give them opportunity to be dual citizens somewhere, and then give them right of return if they come back peacefully, with a job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's kind of the framework. But, of course, Trump doesn't lay out the reasoning in the Trump work. He just crashes down like a wrecking ball with his words. We're going to own Gaza.
Yeah, and I think even you have to read into the sense of how when he says things. When he says own, he doesn't mean own them like
own it philosophically.
Right, yeah.
We're it business.
Right, we're going to own it like we're going to bring in business and American business or,
It's like you tell your basketball team, hey, you go in there and own it.
Yeah.
You don't own the court, but you're going to own the moment.
Right.
But he doesn't, but he knows what he's saying. He knows that he's turning over the apple cart and then we're going to rebuild it in our image.
Yeah, and he knows how he's taken and he wants to be taken that way. Yeah. He wants them to chew on those words. And this kind of goes into a little bit with our last episode in the sense of the speed at which he's doing all these things is what he's not doing is he's not doing one thing and allowing the media to chew on it for 2 weeks.
No.
They don't know where to bite.
No,
they don't know what to chew on.
The 3-day media cycle has turned to a 1-day media cycle.
Right.
And every day there's multiple things they can't keep.
It's political blitzkrieg.
It is.
Yeah.
It's brilliant in that regard. How is he as an 80-year-old man having the energy to do that?
He's given more press conferences and spoken more to the media in his first 2 weeks.
And he's going to the Super Bowl.
Right. Then Biden did his entire term, right?
Yeah.
He has spoken more words, and he is fluent.
Yeah.
I mean,
he has a big vocabulary.
I mean, you could speak to him about any topic, and he has.
Yeah.
He can grab it.
Yeah.
He has some idea.
Yeah.
He speaks about
And
it.
he does have a personableness to himself, even about people that don't like him or whatever. I would like to see him sit in the box with Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl, and then somebody sings Kumbaya, and then all that. He gets all the Swifties. We're done.
Yeah, that's it.
That's worship.
Yeah. Yeah. It's over.
Go ahead.
We're talking foreign policy. I got a question. We saw at his
Is
inauguration.
this from a viewer?
No, this is from
The
me
way
as
he said it, right?
as a Gen
This is
Z-
from he who has the final say as the mixer.
As a UFC fan, we saw at his inauguration people like Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
We saw the owner of Meta. We saw Dana White,
Yeah.
who now Dana White is actually a Meta. He's like a top
He's on the
Meta
board.
staff member. He's
Yeah.
a Meta board. Well, he's been dipping his hand into the Middle East for these last two fights, I think. They just February 1st, Adesanya fought Imov
Yeah.
in Saudi Arabia, the biggest money that's ever been in the UFC.
Yeah.
So I wonder, with their close relation to President Trump,
Yeah.
do you think there's going to be some more business transactions via the Middle East? And
Absolutely.
I don't know if that comes
and
with
I'll be honest
peace
with
or
you,
what, but
like what Jason said, with all the stuff going on, these little side hustles, everybody's just like, yep. So, I mean.
Well, yeah, these guys like Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
It seemed like they're doing a 180.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of, they blame Biden's presidency for some of the stuff they were doing, but it's like they know you got to get on the Trump train.
they see the money bags.
Well, they
I
were
think.
on the wrong train, and now they're switching, getting the right
Jumping
train and
ship.
trying to kiss up. But you know what's scary about this is, number one, we're talking about an American president, the Antichrist quotient, taking over a piece of Israel, getting with all the techno-haves, having access and control to all the information, making every other nation bend. Who shall fight against the beast? Who shall? And so I'm not saying he's the Antichrist. I'm saying we're ready for one. We're ready for that caricature. We're not looking for it. We're not worshiping, but we're ready for that character. It's there, and that's what the world wants. And if you take even a pseudo-Christian culture and a semi-Bible literate, you might go for it. If possible, deceive even the elect. And so I'm saying, let's be all American. Let's win at these issues. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's appreciate, pray for our president and all that kind of stuff. But these things, I think, do freak me out to an extent as to where we're at. Manifest destiny is almost a word like prophecy fulfillment, isn't it? Yeah. It's like we're America and we're meant to go to California, Alaska, and beyond. But it's also like it's our destiny to be the Babylonian Empire of the final age, to be that, and that's why I wrote the book, Surviving This Babylon. As society and culture is global, is connected, as we're all connected on our phones and everything, how do we survive that? Because there's minefields in that, there's traps in that, whether it be just personal with your own mind and heart, or cultural with our society. As much as our society seems to be winning, at the same time, the negative elements could be sucking us in. So how do you survive that? Pastor Jay and I, we love the idea of worshiping Christ with an excellent spirit. Daniel had an excellent spirit. He survived Babylon. He thrived in it. He actually conquered it, moved on to the Persians, right? And then because of him, you had guys like Esther, Nehemiah, Mordecai in high positions to then basically rescue Israel and bring it back to the Holy Land. So there's a beautiful arc there of spiritual fervency, even in the midst of Babylon, winning the day, and winning people over, because God is bigger than any leader, any country, any problem. And if you believe that, then you get up every day and you're like, everything's against me. I'm losing, but not today. Jesus is with me, and he goes before me, behind me, to my left and right, above me, below me. And I am in his will, and his spirit is in me. If God be for me, who can be against me? Well, let's close with a little Musk talk, guys, because if Trump is an eccentric American with a little bit of megalomania in his psyche, Musk is flat out an alien from Mars, right? I mean, he trumps Trump.
Yeah.
When it comes to ambition and where he'll go with it. And he plays the right hand against the left hand against the right. But right now he seems to be on the good side because he's sweeping out with courage and authority all the corruption, that is in America. And so if you're on the right, you're like, go, Elon, go, But at the same time, could Elon be covering up, finding information and covering up his own stupidity? Could he try to be getting leverage on the other techno haves that are in the AI race and all that kind of stuff? And if you don't think that he would, you're nuts, right? He's South African, grew up in Canada, does business in the United States, but does it with China, Russia, and all this kind of stuff. And so, if Trump's the most powerful man in the world, Trump's standing on the shoulders of Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk was the largest single donor of the 2024 Trump campaign.
Yeah. And so he's got access to the Treasury. He's got access to U.S. aid. And to me, that makes sense. If I was president, I'd send you guys to do the exact same thing if I had even that idea and that, the understanding of doing it. So it makes sense to me. But again, this is one of those little red flags that we have to say, now exactly how could this turn against us with a flip of the switch? How could this turn against us with a flip of the switch? So personally, I would love to send a rocket to Mars. I'd love to go. I'll be the first Baptist preacher, preach the first sermon on Mars or something.
Mars Hill.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, Mars Hill. There's nothing in particular wrong with technology or advancement, but some of the propositions actually have corruption built into them. And this guy's just a guy, but he talks about Christianity the same way a lot of these other people do, and Trump does. And so he recognizes these guys would both say that a Bible culture is the best culture. It's proven it. They both say that. I would rather do business under this culture. They absolutely would say that. And so we're thrilled by it. And at the same time, we don't want to worship it or give it too much green light. What do you young guys think about Elon as far as young people favoring him?
I think as far as conservatives, he's become a top. He's a gamer. He streams video games as well as running all these companies like his. When it's 5 o'clock,
does he have stream of him playing?
He jumps on. Yeah, his Stream Link. They're starting to do their own video game stream thing. So that's a whole nother community of people. But he is a little more in touch with Gen. I'm a Gen Z. I'd say, Jesse, are you a millennial?
I think I'm a millennial.
Yeah, I'm Gen Z. He's a little more in touch with them, but because he's aided on Donald Trump's side, he's got some real hate on all the social media. For about 4 days, my whole Instagram Reels feed was anti-Elon Musk stuff. Yeah. So he's definitely got the other end of it because...
Well, I mean, if he's got control of this stuff, how can you buy or sell?
Right.
Without some sort of whatever's coming, right? And AI is involved in that. Musk was the one that first came up with PayPal, and I used to joke it was papal, like Rome. Yeah. Like what's going on. I used to joke about it, but that joke was like have taken prophetic wings and flying into this position.
Well, what's the role of the false prophet?
There you go. Yeah. When the image dies, it lifts up the image. Man, we're getting into weeds here, boys. This is some sci-fi channel.
I mean, he promotes the beast
and makes him semi-live.
Yeah,
and makes allegiance to it. Yeah, and what about the Musk?
He was the guy that bought Twitter and reactivated President Donald Trump on Twitter. So, if anyone's gone before and cleared the way, he gave Trump his Twitter back.
The image. So because if you wear the hat and the watch and the shoes and have the Bible and do this, kind of do the YMCA dance or whatever, that's the image of, right? That's in the image of. And if his words and mentality goes, that could be in the image of. So I'm not saying he is. I'm saying we're ready for the construct.
So the beast takes a head wound and rises from it.
Yes. You couldn't write a better novel.
And Elon Musk is all about Neuralink.
Yes.
That's his invention.
Yes.
Okay, so we've already seen the idea of Trump taking a head wound and the possibility it can happen again, right?
Yep.
And mark the timestamp on this one.
Yeah.
And then Elon, sustaining his life with Neuralink.
Yeah, and he's already telling Iran, "You kill me, we're going to obliterate you." That's already his orders. Like it's already there. It's already written out.
Like, can you do that?
In the 70s and 80s, guys, there was a
I don't know if you could do post.
Yeah,
there
was a because like Ruling from the Grave, but there was a trilogy of movies. I never watched them. I wouldn't suggest them, but you can see little previews or promos like on YouTube or something. And it was called The Omen, and The Omen was the prophecy of the Antichrist, and The Omen was a little boy named Damien, which of course means French for demon. and he killed his parents. He went and lived with I think an uncle or something, who was a senator, American senator, who became president, and then Damon's in the White House. Didn't get elected to the White House, but he's in the White House. And so, and the whole thing, I think that the third one's called 666 or something like that. And so you took this biblical ideology, you Americanized it, put it on screen, and it's like playing out. And, you know, who's in the image of Donald Trump? How about Barron Trump? So, and people have these likenesses of Damien in the Omen to Barron Trump as well. So, you know, I don't want anybody to go on search lists to try to, you know, see this stuff. But I know as kind of an older person, knowing this, watching this for 35 years, that it's just uncanny. It is just uncanny. And of course, the devil gets a say, and he's gonna play it in. I've heard other, you know, preachers say that there's always an antichrist in the wings. I believe that. Mm-hmm. And so every society has that. But it's our job to not call it, but to say, hey, let's red flag that one.
Yeah, I just want to make a point. So you think of him being the head of X, right? He runs X. X Twitter. He has 611 million users. If you go look up world religions, you have Christianity, loose term there, but then Islam, then Hinduism. That would make, if you kind of put it on those terms as far as people's devotion to something, that would put him as far as followers of, you know, or users of his platform, like in terms of religion, like fourth.
Yeah.
And you got other people, influencers out there, you know, like Mr. Beast, who has 600 million followers as well. Just kind of crazy that these platforms are kind of their own religions. You follow them, you watch them. In some ways, you even share what's going on in them. You're proselytizing.
Yes.
So, when you think of him on that level too.
Yeah, and Pastor Jason said ultimately, it's humanism. Satanism is humanism. Mm-hmm. It's self, and it's human as God, because that was the lie of the garden. And so it's playing out on a grand scale. The devil said, "Ye shall be as gods. Ye shall be as this." And you can have a 10-year-old kid who lives in a rundown flat in some poor Central American country, have a little smartphone, and get a following and video and do stuff, and he be as gods. I got the wisdom, I got the knowledge, I got the access, I got the connection, I got people looking at me, talking about me, etc., etc. So, and it becomes not just viewing, it becomes taking the opinion of, which is worship. Taking the opinion of.
So in the White House, you have a man who is all about great swelling words.
Mm-hmm. Fierce countenance.
You have a man who owns his own satellite network and controls global communications and the platforms in which we can disseminate information instantly. Mm-hmm. He can go live to the world. Mm-hmm. And then you have a vice president who is spouting Catholic doctrine.
Yes.
That is a woman rides the beast.
Yeah. No. Absolutely, guys. Absolutely, guys. Now listen.
I mean, I'm just saying.
We're crazy and on the fringe for the last 35 years because of having the mentality and the mindset, and they say, well, it's conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy theory till it's not. That the government would fund itself to circulate money to unions and press and all that kind of stuff to get itself elected again is pure evil. It's what the communists would do, and that's been done. It's not a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and just along the lines of the Catholic influence, you know, the Pope just recently said all religions are passed to God. So, you know, as much as we want to cheer
I'll be honest with you, that's not just recently. We've been documenting that for a long, so long as you guys have been alive. We've been documenting that stuff. So, for us, it's not just kind of uncanny. It's like, yep, of course. But, you know, people saying this stuff, we're never really listened to. We're not really listened to now in that regard. But I think, you know, God told Noah, prepare an ark. And Noah had a long time to raise his family with this understanding of what was going to happen, et cetera, and mocked for it. But when the day came, God said, go, and he knew really. So I think we have the benefit of knowing in our minds and hearts that God is in control. His kingdom is coming. His kingdom is coming, and the king is coming. And however bad it gets for anybody, including us, like we're not beyond persecution or trouble. The fact of the matter is, it's okay. We have joy. Our God is true. This proves him. To me, this elevates the extent of salvation and its importance and its the eternal security, you know, of it all. And so all this becomes a gospel opportunity for us and the church and our families. And, God saved Noah and his family, 8 souls. And that was enough for God. That was justice with God. That was mercy with God. That was the fullness of the numbers with God. Human math didn't mean anything to him. So the fact that there might just be conservative, Christian, Bible-thumping people that kind of look at this and say, we're glad to be Americans. We voted, but we're not going to worship. And all these switches you're creating, we're not really happy with. And you can switch them against us. That doesn't make us nervous Nellies. It doesn't make us negative. It actually makes us wise. Mm-hmm. It actually makes us wise. And so, but with wisdom, it allows us to love. So order or meris or, whatever. I would just say love of Jesus trumps all. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of Christians, a lot of progressive, and I think even some conservative they would say we're being cynical. Yes. Calling everyone the Antichrist or talking about Antichrist and the message of the Bible is love. But in 1 John, which was written 80-60, so Christ is just off the earth, right? There's not been a lot of time. 1 John 4 says, Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. This is right after. They're talking about false prophets right after Christ had left the earth. Yeah. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. So that should be our standard. Mm-hmm. Anyone that doesn't meet that falls into the second category. Yeah. So when we say Antichrist, this is what we're talking about. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard it, that it should come, and even now is already in the world.
Precisely, God became man. Mm-hmm. That's what that's saying. Jesus was God. He became man, came to earth. And so there's a lot of Jesuses. Mm-hmm. A lot of cults, a lot of religion, a lot of Jesus on jewelry, a lot of Jesus talk, Jesus songs, a lot of Jesus sentiment. But there's one true Jesus, and you have to accept him as he presents himself in order to be saved,
right? And
in order not to fall into deception of the Antichrist, because the Antichrist is just the instead of Christ, one of these other Christs, so that Trump won't connect to his own sin, that he uses Christianity in the third term, that he thinks God did something for him, but that perhaps he can ascend himself, is actually very satanic.
Yeah,
but being done in the name of, and sometimes, and here's the danger, cheered by true Christians.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why we want to say we're Americans, but we're Christians first. So
and even this epistle is written to the early believers, because there were early believers who had, right after Christ left the earth, people had this false gospel already.
Nothing new under the sun. This is just American.
Right. Yeah. And so when we talk about individual characters as the Antichrist, they get cynical, and actually a lot of our the negativity that we get even here at the channel, the podcast, that's a point people get on contention. 1st, 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, Jude, they all talk about this idea of there are many antichrists, many false prophets. So it's not cynical, or maybe if it is, then we should be cynical. We should have an eye for that. We should keep an eye out for it. If you're not, you're ignoring a large chunk of scripture, just to maybe, sleep better at night, which it doesn't cause us to stay up.
I'm glad to have the youngest guy in the room say that. Everyone thinks the old guys are cynical, but what about wisdom? It's not taking away our joy. I'm living my best life, right? I mean, but it is something for us to be careful about. Okay, let's talk about one more thing before we go. Let's talk about Russia and Ukraine. Last year we actually did a couple episodes on that, and I think the previous year we might have done something on it as well. So let's come back to it for the last 5 minutes here, okay? Because it's been horrible. I mean, people dying. I've been to Russia.
Going on 3 years now?
Yeah, I've been to Russia in Baptist churches in Russia. There's a lot of wonderful believers, and they love their country, and they love their heritage and history and all that kind of stuff. And they're connected with the brotherhoods. We've supported missionaries in Ukraine. And so that the fact that we could bring it to a ceasefire, which isn't peace, it's just quit shooting for a second, let's talk, right, is great. Trump said he'd do that right away, and here he is right away doing it. Both Putin and Zelensky are saying, let's go. And I think that's this week. So he had Netanyahu in. He's having King Jordan in this week. But by the end of this week, he's going to be talking with Putin and Zelensky. And this is the, second week of February. So this is a little prophetic. I'm saying right now we're going to be really now talking about blessed are the peacemakers. But is it real blessing or is it imagined blessing? Is it real peace or is it not? what is the transaction cost? What does America get? What does Putin get? What does Trump get? If Putin gets the Donetsk and the other one up there, and then they get the other two southern, that's kind of an even trade. But then they give the Kirk's region back and get maybe part of the Crimea back or something of that nature. If Trump is thinking about some international order in Jerusalem, in Gaza, and then perhaps in the Crimea in order to create peace, okay? An international order that he's part of, that Musk is part of. What is it called? Who's under it? What is the law? Mm-hmm. Is it a remaking of the United Nations, which we're pulling out of? So I'm calling it, you connect these issues because the devil's got them connected and God's got them connected. Then we got to be looking at this issue to create an entity, to create a thought process, to create something of that nature. So that's my prophetic idea. Do you see that? Is that crazy, or can you see through the smoke at something that would be called peacemaking this week that, again, is out of the box? Because Trump's going to come up with something, and then people will go, what in the world?
Well, he has to, right?
Yeah, right.
He has to. He's already called. The one thing, the one shot he's already called is this will happen.
Yes.
So he's already defined success.
Or else they'll be held to pay, or else.
So he's defined success that he will get a deal. And so now both sides ought to know, well, okay, I can stop you from getting the deal you want until I get what I want. And so
the Israelis could be saying, we don't want Trump over here. Let's kill him. The Gazans could be saying that. Listen, the Russians could be saying that. The Ukrainians could
They have a camera on Netanyahu's face when Trump is saying, we're going to own Gaza.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, man. But he also said Trump is the best president that Israel has ever had.
Netanyahu is playing to get Judea and Samaria. He's going to get Judea and Samaria out of this. And then Gaza remains the final question mark. Putin needs to have peace. He needs to have the Donetsk region because that's what they went to war over. He has to get that. Zelensky has to hold as much of Ukraine as possible and possibly hold that Crimea in some sort of status. So the Crimea becomes the final status peace thing. So does Jerusalem. I'm just saying these are the same personalities, the same connections, the same out of the book thinking with all these technocrats and AI. All these problems could be fed into a computer. What's AI going to say about it? You know what I'm saying? And then who is the AI? Who's doing the program with the AI? I don't trust that at all.
Well, and this whole war has been fought on. I mean, you could open Instagram and start scrolling reels, and you'll see a video of a Ukrainian soldier like in a trench.
Yeah.
And then you'll scroll to the next reel, and it's a Russian guy in a tank. So like everyone's seen this war.
Yeah.
It's like, so if peace was made, it wouldn't just be a Russian-Ukrainian thing.
Yeah.
It's worldwide.
Yeah, it would be communist in the West. It would be a big thing, but if it was tied in, and like Trump loves the deal. He loves the deal. So and then being able to solve our own domestic issues. So we say domestic foreign policy anymore. Those things go they cross over, don't you think? The domestic policy and that, because it's all monetary in the name of Christianity, whatever.
Well, and the other part of this is the military industrial complex. Yeah. And they have a cash cow in the Ukrainian war. Mm-hmm. And so notice how we're going to end the Ukrainian war is also being countered with we're going to increase U.S. defense spending. Yeah. Like, it's almost, there's an appeasement to that military industrial complex. Yeah. The money you're going to lose here, we're going to spend it here, and we're going to buy more things from you.
And Trump knows that Putin has to save face somehow. Trump knows that MBS needs to come out on top in the Middle East as far as the Arabs are concerned. He knows that. So he's playing all that together.
Because it's probably in America's best interest to continue to have Putin a known quantity who keeps Russia at bay. He keeps control. It doesn't break up. Yeah. You don't have warlords or different regions. Yeah.
Because there's radicals more than Putin.
And so, there's probably in our best, because he got in trouble about a year ago, remember? And then all of a sudden it kind of went away. Yeah. And I'm wondering what level of CIA influence was in keeping him. Yeah. Because we probably don't want to get rid of him. Yeah. I mean, he's like Saddam.
Yeah.
If we get rid of him,
he was a KGB officer. He knows the game. Yeah.
He knows the game.
Yeah. So I think this week is something for us to look for. Maybe we'll come back next week, episode 3 of the podcast, and be talking about peacemaking. That seems like a good concept to try to thread these things together, or at least put the concept out there to have people talking about. Well, that's all for us today. Go ahead, Josh.
I got one thing to say as we wrap this episode up. We've been talking about, kind of national destiny. What's America's destiny? What are we doing internationally? I want to plug one of your books, Design and Destiny of Nations. You can get on Amazon, $14.95. The 12 divinely designed factors of national destiny. So, what should a country, what should a nation, and what are the biblical principles of a nation, and what should a nation be concerned with, and how should they operate?
Yeah, the Bible defines what marriage is, also defines what a nation is, and how it works, what the parts are. And so that will elevate Christian thinking, and we tie a lot of scripture to all those things as well.
What are the rules internationally? Well, there's not really. But good book to pick up and understand.
Go to BibleNation.org. You can see that, all of our articles,
or
all of our publications.
We'll put it in the links, right? We'll put the
link down below in the show notes.
Yeah, the link will be in the show notes. Just go right there and get it.
Trump's not the only guy that can sell a book, all right?
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Appreciate you watching. Until next time, remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven and it works.